What's happening, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Athletes to Athletes podcast. On today's episode, I talk with Ivan Tchatchouwo, a former basketball player from Cameroon who came to the States when he was 6 years old and went on to play at Concordia College before creating The Zone, a personalized and data-driven mental wellness platform. We discuss his playing career, how he created his own platform, and what the future holds for him and his team. So I hope that you enjoyed today's conversation with Ivan, and as always, I appreciate you listening to the A2A podcast. So we're here with another episode of the A2A podcast, and as I said, I'm sitting down with Ivan. And Ivan, I really appreciate you coming on, and glad to see you're feeling better, and you got a chance to take a little bit of a break. Obviously, as a founder and CEO, you're wearing a lot of hats, and so you always need that time to kind of de-stress. But like I said, I'm happy that you're able to join me now. And before we get into today's conversation, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and let them know who you are?
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me on a wonderful platform. So my name is Ivan Tchatchouwo, as he said, co-founder and CEO of The Zone, proud Cameroonian, born in Cameroon, moved to New York pretty early in my young years, about 6 years old, and played sports my whole life. Really getting into the mental health space came about from my own experience. So tackling and creating The Zone with my team, was my way of giving back to other young people and how to help them really navigate what they're going through. So that's a bit about, me. I know we'll get into a lot of the details. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you said it, Cameroon born, and you came to the States when you were about 6 years old. Do you remember anything from your childhood being born in Cameroon and coming to the States?
Yeah. I mean, I think I got a clear, vivid memory of what's like, it's free. It's freeing back home.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just was an experience that when I kind of get bunched up in my thoughts and the work that we're doing and a lot of the stuff that's being thrown at me, I just recall that I was just a kid from Cameroon that, was outside playing soccer with my sandals, right? And everybody was, and it was just a freeing experience. And your soul you feel kind of enriched when you go back. I still get it when I go back home. So being that young Cameroon free kid, I was a dancer when I was a kid, so I used to dance a lot. Afro beats was a thing. So yeah, I think the biggest thing that I always, the vivid memory is, how freeing it is, how enjoyable it was to just be, and before things got crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned it, you said you remember playing soccer back home in Cameroon, and you were also a dancer, and then obviously you go on to play basketball. So sports and being active have always been kind of a big part for you. But what was it that made you get into sports in the first place? Where was the kind of the motivation to get into sports and just be that active kid?
The motivation. What was the motivation? I think coming here, number one, I had to kind of figure out my way to merge myself into the American society. Mm-hmm. I only spoke French when I came here. My parents put me in English-speaking school, so I had to figure out a way to make friends. And I remember the first day that, gym class, after a week of just crying because I couldn't understand anybody, we were going to gym. And I don't think I've ever seen an indoor gym when I was, a young kid in Cameroon, but it was an indoor gym. Big indoor gym that they took us to, and they rolled out the basketballs, and I started kicking it around like it was a soccer ball. And some kids came over to me and was like, "No, you got to shoot." And I'm like, "Okay." I just was like, "I don't know what you're talking about," but they just started shooting, and I started doing what they were doing, right? And from there on, I made friends, and I still remember the kid's name, Warren. And we grew up kind of together. We ended up going to the same middle school and high school. So getting into sports was just a way of myself merging into the American society, and I kind of started pouring my whole identity into it. I became pretty decent in middle school, and then I became pretty good in high school, and then played college. So I like to think that, sports has given me a lot.
Mm-hmm. So what was it about basketball, and why did you gravitate more towards that, seeing as soccer seemed to be something that you really loved growing up?
there was just no soccer fields in the Bronx. The soccer field, and it was funny. I like to say my brother. I got 2 younger brothers, and my youngest one, when he became a certain age, my dad started finding all these soccer leagues, and I was like, dang. I mean, where was you at when I was trying to play soccer? You ain't even come to my hoop game. Now you got all this time, but I never seen a field. It was just basketball. I think when my parents say go outside, it was just basketball. Right? Growing up in the Bronx is a basketball heavy place, so that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. So you said you started to get really good when you were in middle school, and then it really took off when you were in high school. Everyone has kind of the epiphany moment that, this is where I belong. I belong to be on the court, right? And you said, one of the first memories was your friend Warren teaching you how to shoot, essentially in as a youngster. But then as you got better, what was that epiphany moment that basketball was going to be your ticket, and that's where you belonged?
It's interesting. It's a good question. I never thought it was my ticket. I always kept it as my way of staying connected. I never wanted to be the nerd kid, even though I was, right? Going to household education was everything. And my dad came probably 3 games. My mom didn't even believe that coaches give scholarships, and she would hang up on, recruiters and coaches that would call because she didn't think nothing was free. So but I do remember on a basketball tip when I knew that I was, pretty good was my AU coach sent me to academic All-American camp because I always had the grades, and he was like, that's where I'll be best suited. And I remember getting there and, getting on the court with a lot of the academic top kids and having my way of hitting game winners from like deep. I was having fun, you know what I mean? And I kind of like just looked, I was like, man, my path with sports has a bright future. It has a bright future, and obviously you're naive, like, oh, I'm going to play pro, I'm going to do this, and I can tell you the story when I found out I wasn't going to play pros when I played against Kyrie. So it's both of them happened actually one summer apart.
Yeah. What was that game like when you played against Kyrie?
I remember like it was yesterday. It was a PA 5-star basketball camp, outdoors, last session where all the top players go. We ended up. It was like the first couple preliminary games outside. We ended up matching up, and I knew he didn't know who I was because I wasn't on the top country rankings. I was just one of the better defenders in New York City, and I know he lived out in Jersey. So I was like, all right, I'm one player out of the country. This is it's my chance to make a bigger name for myself. So it's a long, because you're only allowed to play 2 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
So play second and fourth. That was a long 2 quarters. And I did not win the matchup at all. And I kind of learned right there. I was like, oh, this is what a pro NBA player is like. This is what a pro is like. And he just had talented gift no matter what I did, how hard I worked. He was uber talented and he was uber confident, as a younger adult. So I kind of knew, okay, well, my parents are kind of right. I better start picking up these books a little bit heavier and try to get this super GPA. So that's that was a good story. Now I'm thinking about it when it happened though. Pissed.
Yeah. So you eventually end up, playing basketball though on the college level, and you said your mom was hanging up on recruiters. How do you become a college basketball player with all that kind of happening, right? How do you let your mom know, hey, we got to stop hanging up on these people? They're actually trying to get me to that next level, not just on the basketball court, but educationally, right? How does all of that kind of come to fruition and you make it to that next level?
Honestly, it was just education on her part,
Yeah.
Like she thought I was just hooping and just waste time. That's just not their world, So I kind of had to just talk to her about the situations at bay. But in terms of like how does it happen, I had a lot of good coaches, AU coaches. I was a knucklehead in my high school program, so that didn't really bode well. But I had a lot of good AU coaches, and they, it's funny. My senior year in high school, I missed a whole year because of a bad decision that I made, walking out on my coach because he was being too hard on me, and I just didn't feel like it was fair in front of college coaches, and I made a poor decision, and I walked out. And my college basketball journey could have ended right there, but I ended up still having Division IIs that were interested, and ended up playing Division II basketball, which is, was a great experience. And I became a scholarship athlete And my parents, they didn't argue when they started seeing the letter of intent and the money that was behind it. They didn't argue with that. So I think it was realistic when they were like, oh, he's gonna get an education, and we're gonna get to save money, and we can spend it on other kids. And I'm like, I always tell my other brothers, you guys owe me. I helped pay for some of your education.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And now, how did you said you had some D2 schools that were interested and you ended up becoming a scholarship athlete, but how did you figure out where you wanted to go to school? Was it, I want to stay close to home because, you were ultimately in New York, or did you want to go elsewhere? Obviously education is very big for your family. So they were probably happy to see you go to a higher learning institution, but for you, how did you find that great fit?
I mean, I made a basketball decision, which I don't regret it. But it wasn't the best academic school.
Mm-hmm.
And when I made the decision that I made to leave the court my senior year the way that I did, I didn't have a lot of options at that point. I was being recruited by lower Division I at the time, but then when I made that decision, I didn't have a lot of options. So I ended up having to play Division II, and a lot of the Division II schools, well, in the New York area, I wanted to stay close to home. So I ended up playing at Concordia College in Bronxville, New York. We had a pretty decent team, but I committed there because the coach really showed a lot of interest, and I was like, I get to stay close, not too far from my house, and my mom could bring me food. So that was big for me. But I originally did want to go. I wanted to go to Columbia from the get go. I went to their elite camp. I was also being looked at by the basketball coach. But when I made the decision I made, it impacted that. But I did end up going to Columbia anyway to get my master's.
Yeah, I was gonna say you eventually do end up there, do a lot, a lot more schooling and getting your master's. When you entered college, and education has been kind of a staple of this conversation. When you entered college, was it a goal of yours to eventually go on and get your master's degree, or was it kind of like other guys where they realize, hey, this is something that I want down the line? Was it more of a goal as a 18-year-old, or did it kind of come to fruition as you were playing college basketball and seeing what you were going to do on that next level?
Was it a goal to do more schooling?
Yeah.
I think the ego drove that. I was told that, and then also a bit of self-esteem. I going to Columbia, I thought I needed it. It was a great stepping stone. Don't get me wrong, right? But now knowing what I know, I had a lot of tools in me, but I didn't know that I wanted to go to the master's program or do more schooling. I actually was like, I'm not going back to school. But then I was like, you know what? I want to be around other educated people as I'm still trying to navigate this and don't know what the next journey is, because in college I did pour everything into basketball until it ended, right? So it was a slippery slope of like, man, okay, what do I do? I'm 20, 24, 25. I was working in fitness, and I'm like, I want to learn more. I want to be around other super smart kids. And my mom was like, you're not getting into Columbia. I'm like, what? So I ended up taking community college classes while working full time to kind of start the process of getting into Columbia, because I needed to bump my GPA up, because of the things that transpired in undergrad when I got hurt and stopped going to classes. I went down the whole mental health my own mental health struggles. But I was just ambitious, I guess. I'm like, man, I want to go to one of the best schools if I'm gonna go, and I want to kind of get be around other smart individuals and just see what they're up to, see how they're thinking about life, And obviously, of course, I get there, and the first year I don't try to make any friends, But the second year I took two electives in a business school, and it changed everything. I got to see a bigger world, and I got to see, this is where the party's at for me. And I love it. I never left the party. And the business was always what I wanted to kind of get into and create something.
Yeah. So is that when you created the zone, when you were in school, or did it come a little bit after you got your master's?
No, the zone started right after college. It started at first as I created, it was a sporting events. It was a safe haven sporting events, guided to build holistic well-being for young athletes. So we hold basketball clinics, but then we also hold education series around mindfulness and financial wellness. So we actually grew that business to about 75K in revenue right out of undergrad. I had no idea what I was doing. My parents was only investors, and I put my own money up. So pivoted literally the zone from that space into the digital health space in Colombia. Though one of my classes, Launch Your Startup, myself and my co-founder Eric were talking at the time, and we were like, man, we want to kind of do something in the tech space, and we know that there's an opening specifically to help young athletes navigate this. So that was kind of the origin and the storyline of like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. And yeah, the class helped me think about how to build a deck, how to pitch it, how to raise money, how to build a business, how to scale a business. And then I had met friends and met people in there that believed in the vision, and just kind of made introductions. So it really came from that time, but I mean, it came from both of our experiences, what we struggled in, our other co-founder, what we went through. And we wanted to kind of just create a tool that felt like a safe space for them to navigate their own journey.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, how much of your own experience and struggle was poured into creating the zone, and how much of that would you say is still fueling you guys today, right? With all these different things changing with mental health and all the different things swirling around, basketball and sports in general. How much of your own experiences are still poured into every single day as you're continuing to build the zone?
I think a lot of it. I think I try not to now, since we have about 4,500 student athletes we service. I try not to put myself as a user as much, because now you got a younger population of users that are impacted, and what they're going through is more important, and it's more prevalent than what we went through. It's a little different, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I think on the foundational level, it's understanding the mental health care system and education. It's being able to look at how long my process was of trying to get help, and who sought it out, and if my coach never found out, how was it going to be communicated, and what happens to the kids that never get this communicated and never start the process, and looking at each step of the way and building that roadmap and that journey helped me look at, oh, okay, this is how we want to come to solve a solution for this young population. So we had to look into ourselves to build it out. But now we get access to a lot of young people, and we like to call them our community of folks that we provide aid to through technology to kind of be able to, get better, right? To be able to get better and look at this tool as a way that, how do we get them ahead of where we were at, right? And then be able to close the loop end to end.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to dig a little bit more into your experiences, right? You said that you had an injury that, kind of really messed with your mental health. How did you end up going about getting help, and what did it mean to you to have, from what it sounds like, a community around you that wanted to help you?
Well, the community part wasn't really there until it got, extreme. I think I got hurt, and for me, it was supposed to be a pretty big year. For me, I had waited my turn as an underclassman. I turned to the upperclassman, turned captain. Supposed to have a pretty good year, and that injury just decimated me. And for me, it felt like the end of the world, right? Because I had tied everything into sports, into who I was. And when it happened, it was just like, whoa. I had to take a step back, but I didn't get to take a step back until I got to the clinical counselor's department. What transpired is when I got hurt, I just started going down the route of drinking in the mornings, and what are the different substances that I could use to feel good, so I can run away from the pain. That's kind of what transpired in the beginning. And then from there on, it was like, all right, I stopped going to classes because I'm like, well, nobody cheering for me. I'm not getting the applause anymore. So it's like, well, I'm not going to class. I'm not doing this. There's no reason for me to be here. And my parents say no, because obviously when you're in college, you can hide your GPA. They don't got to know none of that, right? So, but my coaching staff found out that, I was struggling. And, they pointed me down the direction of Dr. Diaz, who was a behavioral health, mental health coach. who I still talk to this day, and told me where he was at. And I had to do the work and walk in his office, but I did. I don't know why, but I was ready, and I just wanted to kind of see. I'm struggling. I'm struggling with performance anxiety. I'm struggling with identity crisis. But then he was like, "You're actually really depressed," and identity crisis and all that. Their actions of it. And he kind of just helped me out, and we would have appointments weekly. And I started the journey of just like trying to get better and understanding how to build tools and how to navigate what I was struggling correctly. And that's kind of how the journey came about of getting better.
Mm-hmm. So once you start to get better, does it make it easier to tell your family about what's going on, and how did your family respond, and how did they kind of corral around you?
I had this funny story. We're good now. We have a great relationship. My dad took me to get a CAT scan when I started telling him, and he was just like, "I can't." They said they can't see anything. I'm like, "Duh, that's not how it works." But my dad was pretty hardcore. He grew up being the leader of his household as I think he's the second youngest or the youngest,
Mm-hmm.
and so he didn't have time to kind of really understand and grasp feelings, But over time now, he's gotten to be educated and he understands like, oh, okay, yeah, this is a thing. This is a thing that impacts everyone, and specifically the younger generation. And we just cope with it totally different, and it might not be wrong or right, but they're lacking that. I like to say that I was part of educating him on that because I stood strong, and we had a lot of debates and fights and arguments, but my mom was great. I guess that was her son. I was her firstborn, so she gave me a lot of grace, and we have a tremendous relationship. And she just listened. My biggest thing is never want to worry her, so I wouldn't always go to her. But she's a great listener. She just kind of showed care and a lot of love.
Mm-hmm. So with going through your own struggles and how you handled it, and how and the doctor, you said you still talk to him to this day. How much of that expertise is being poured into the zone and the people that you're surrounding yourself with as the co-founder and CEO?
I think it's heavy. I try to read as much articles. I have a medical team, as a medical advisory team in the company, but then also have a personal medical advisory team. I talk to clinicians all the time, and I'm under this impression to get to where we need to get to for the world to get better. We need to put the entrepreneurs, the medical providers, the tech and the designers, and the policy creators all in one room. And the reason why I say that is because you can't have policies that push back all of the work that's trying to be done by the providers or the technology teams. Right? Now, obviously, there's got to be things that's put in place, but you have to be very wary of if we're trying to move forward. We got to ruffle some things, right?
Mm-hmm.
For instance, just a good example. When COVID happened, all of a sudden, the government and everything lifted up all of the state policies, and people in Texas was able to get providers from people in California, right? Because they wanted to make sure that everybody was able to get care. That should be a regular norm. Why are we limiting that? What's the reason behind limiting that? If we can do it during COVID, we can do it on a regular day because somebody's best care may come from somebody they connect with somewhere else. You know what I mean? So I think that is very important to kind of think about those things. But yeah, everything is poured into the zone. We have outcomes, efficacy, conversations. We want to make sure that we're looking at what is the actual practical, because the ratio lands anywhere from, depending on where. College is 1,700 students to one counselor, right? And I think in grade school and high school is 1,200 to one. So there's obviously not enough clinicians, and we're going to end up burning them out, right? So I am a big proponent of a lot of these platforms that allow people to see more clinicians. It's good, but at some point there's still going to be people that fall through the cracks, right? And we want to solve and get people that fall through the cracks and give them a way out. And that's kind of been our focus.
Mm-hmm. So what's the future of the zone look like, right? Everyone always has a way that they want to grow. What does that growth look like for the zone?
Yeah, we methodically started with student athletes in college to kind of prove it out. And I think as of last month, we signed a major deal with the Big East Conference, which is, a big corporation in college sports as we see it. And it showed us that, the value that we're providing is there, right? And now our next step is being able to provide this resource to all students, whether in high school, colleges, and that's kind of the next step that we're undertaking now. We're building our new version to kind of solve for that. So it's definitely been exciting. It's definitely been exciting to kind of go down that route and really try to take the next step as a business. So yeah, I think our big vision is to be the leading youth mental wellness provider, mental health care provider, as a platform. And we want to kind of be very ambitious because we feel like we have an intuitive way to kind of talk to this generation.
So we're to the point now where I want to do our 5-question segment, and it's going to be a bit of a mix of your career as an athlete as well as your career as a professional. And the first question I have for you is, what's a game that you'll always remember? What your favorite game? Maybe you had a big game. What was one of those?
That's a good one. My favorite game was at the academic All-American camp. I remember having, I think, almost a triple double. Had the ball in my hands the whole game. It was. I hit a game winner from like a step beyond half court. Before Steph was doing it. That was a really good game. That kind of was when I came into my own and stepped into the different confidence that I had on the court. So that was a really good game for me.
Yeah. What's your first basketball memory that you realized that it was certainly that you were supposed to be a basketball player?
My freshman year of high school, I didn't make the team, and I was dumbfounded because I got, borderline recruited to come there. But I remember what the guy, one of my close friends' father, he was a coach, and he was just like, you think that it's going to be easy. You just came in here and thought we were going to hand it to you. And he was tough. So I came back my sophomore year, and I was a starter day one. In my sophomore year, that preseason was dominating. I remember that they had me in varsity kind of conversations early on. So when I came back, I was like, all right, I know I'm supposed to be here. Right? And that was kind of a big moment for me to know, like, I have a future. I have a future in this, and I can compete at the highest level, one of the highest levels. So that was my thought process. Yeah.
So when you created the zone, what was that first domino to fall? Maybe it was a partnership, or somebody joined the team. But what was that first domino to fall where you were like, "This is what I'm supposed to do," and creating this was the right thing?
When we signed our first school, Lehigh University was a big stepping stone. I still have the written agreement, the check, because it was just like somebody's like, hey, we're going to give you this revenue for this product that you created to solve this problem that we're having. And that was kind of real for me to be like, oh, okay. This, because throughout the way you believe, but then you also have a lot of question marks in yourself, right? But that was a moment that was like, whoa. And now the Big E signing was like, it was another big one, another big stepping stone. It was like, we set out to do it and we did it, and everybody thought it was crazy. It wasn't going to happen, but it happened. So, yeah.
Yeah. Now with the zone, and you said kind of where you want to go next, but what's a major goal for the zone? Maybe this year, maybe next quarter, or maybe even 5 years from now. What's a big goal for the zone and where you're taking it?
Yeah, 2 million kids. For the next 5 years, we want to be able to have a community of 2 million young people utilizing our platform and being impacted in a positive way. I think that's like the biggest thing that I pay attention to, and like as we're growing effectively, we're being purposeful about how we're trying to solve this problem for the organizations that we partner with, but also for the users and consumers that our community. You know,
Mm-hmm.
2 million.
Yeah. 2 million. That's a good number. So final question for you, and it's how we always end, is what's a piece of advice that you were either told or something that you learned, or just something that, you know, has always resonated with you, that has kind of pushed you to, or motivated you, or something that that next generation of people, of kids, should definitely know as they're kind of coming up?
It's a good question. It's a good one. It's a really good one. That stuck with me. My dad's had some good ones. I think the best one is you create your own limitations. You know, I think being boundless to a limit that is put on you, you know, your surrounding puts on you, your environment puts on you, something puts on you, it's not realistic. You know, and I think that when I kind of, that was one big one that kind of made me a little bit more fearless to attack my dreams, right, what I wanted to do. And then the second one was when I was at Columbia. John Katzman, who was the CEO of New Partners, who I still talk to this day, kind of said, $100 million revenue company has the same problems as $1 million company revenue. It's just bigger. The issues are just more drastic because there's more money. And what that did for me just freed me up to know, like, because I was always thinking that these people that create companies are anomalies, right? Like, they're the geniuses of the world and they're preordained and you can't touch them. But when I took that class and they just came and just talked to us, and the main thing is they were looking for us for strategies. They were struggling. They would think about this. And I was like, oh, they're just trying to, nobody really knows anything as much as you think. They're just trying to figure this all out every day. They just happen to be a little bit further in what they're trying to figure out, right? Mm-hmm. So, and now I sit here and know that I'm further than somebody that's trying to just start a business, right? And obviously I have ways to go to drive the impact that we want to drive. But it's, okay, you know, so the message is, you know, if you're listening to this and there's something that you're trying to do, it doesn't have to just be starting a company. Just know that, you know, the person that you're looking up to, or that you're like, man, I can't reach that, they're having the same issues. You know, it's just being in heightened or it's in your face and you're able to see it. So don't be limited by what you think. You know, go out and just do it.
Yeah, that's great. That's a perfect way to end it. Before I let you go, I kind of want to hear kind of the elevator pitch, right? How do you explain to somebody what the Zone is, and how can people find you guys? You know, what's your website, social media handles, anything like that? How do they get in touch with you at the Zone?
Yeah, the Zone in a nutshell is explained as, there's a lot of young people that surround this world that don't know that they have the issues that they're carrying, that if they do know, they're going a lot on social media trying to solve it, or they're not doing anything about it, right? We created a safe place where, you know, we provide a mental health care system in a personalized manner through technology for them in real time. So we like to say, you know, we're there, personal mental wellness coach in your pockets to help you navigate your day-to-day stresses, because you might not want to go to your parents. You might not have access or finances for a provider, right? You might not know how to start and get one. We kind of guide you through that experience. And that's kind of like, you know, how we talk about it to everyone. But how do you find us? At It's the Zone on Instagram, at It's the Zone on Twitter. Me personally is my first and last name on both Instagram and Twitter. Pretty simple. Or itsthezone.com. You know, we're trying to keep it as consistent as possible.
Yeah. Well, Ivan, this has been great, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. It's always really cool to hear people that come from different cultures and bring their culture with them here to the States, and just the knowledge that you have is always great to tap into. For everybody listening, you certainly have to look at, you know, their website, check out It's the Zone. You know, I certainly learned a ton just kind of doing some research on you. And I love the platform, and you know, so I hope that you guys continue to grow. Hopefully you hit that 2 million number. But man, this has been really, really great, and I appreciate you coming on. Yeah. Anything else for us as we close up?
Man, listen, thanks for the work that you guys are doing. You know, I think media is the best way to kind of get information in front of the population, right? So, with athletes to athletes and the process that you guys are doing and telling athlete stories, I hope that it can help one kid. And if it does, we've done our part. So I appreciate the platform and appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Athletes to Athletes podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. To engage with everything the A2A platform has to offer, go to the App Store and search Athletes to Athletes to download our new app. You can check out our educational material, and you'll ensure that you don't miss when a new episode of the A2A podcast drops. Again, thank you for listening. We'll see you again next time.